of course, the famous sword. But what is less well known about the samurai is that they were intellects. Here is a surprise. And they were well educated. In a nation at that time, education was not a kind of a great thing for everybody. So, a collection, a gathering of the intellects of the samurai in a mission sent from Japan to Europe, starting by the country of France. In order to reach Europe, they have to sail all the way through until they reach the Red Sea, and in the Red Sea they will dock with their vessel in front of our very truly Suez harbor. So they arrived to Suez indeed, and they docked with their vessel, and now they will have, because the Suez Canal was of course not through yet. So they had to use land from Suez all the way to Alexandria, and from Alexandria they will travel through the Mediterranean to France.
So that was the first mission by the Japanese to Egypt.
As a matter of fact, it was not
Egypt,
a mission to Egypt, to tell you the truth. It was a mission to Europe, but going through Egypt. And that's where they were surprised. That's where the samurai were kind of impressed by the the modern Egyptian civilization. What happened is that the first thing, when they went to Suez, they saw a train. The Japanese saw a train in Suez in Egypt, 1862. And that was the first train they saw in their lives. There was no trains in Japan. The second most well-known railway in the world was in Egypt, as we all know. So, from the members of this mission was a man called Fukuzawa. Fukuzawa wrote, he was a well-known intellect, he was one of the samurai mission members, and he wrote in his diaries and in his books all and every single thing he saw and get impressed by in Egypt as well as in other places. So from Fukuzawa, we knew things. So in modern times came a professor from the International Japan University, and also another very well-known, if you like, scholar. They both studied Fukuzawa and started to talk about him lately. The Alexandrian Bibliothèque, the Bibliotheca Alexandrina, documented Fukuzawa and documented what those professors and those intellects talked about Fukuzawa. And they said Fukuzawa wrote about the train, that's number one. Then the mission is going to take the train from Suez to Cairo. They spent in Cairo 3 nights, and they visited the citadel of Yusuf Salah ad-Din al-Ayyubi. And I'm here trying to rewrite the history of this amazing gentleman, Salah ad-Din al-Ayyubi, or Salah ad-Din the Ayyubide. And because everybody know him by Salah ad-Din, nobody knows that his first name was Yusuf. So we have to teach our children, teach our people, teach ourselves that his first name was Yusuf. Yusuf and not Yusuf. There is no Yusuf, there is Yusuf. There is a Dhamma, Yusuf. All right. So they visited the citadel. They call it Al-Jabal Citadel. This citadel that you know about, Al-Qal'a, is called Al-Jabal, Qal'at Al-Jabal, or the citadel of the mountain. They also visited the Mosque of Muhammad Ali, being in the enclosure of the citadel, and they visited the pyramids and they took photos with the Sphinx. This photo is still very well known in the famous international everywhere, even on the websites, on the internet, and it is now documented many times in the Japan documentary of the parliament. The Japanese parliament library has got a picture, a true picture, original picture of the samurai with the Sphinx. And that was an amazing thing for us. Now, the second thing that Fukuzawa was impressed by was that he mentioned how fast the train between Suez and Cairo was. The speed of the Egyptian train impressed the Japanese in 1862. Something when you read about, you get impressed yourself. Third thing that Fukuzawa is mentioning, he's mentioning something interesting, very, very important as well. He mentioned public toilets in Cairo. Once again, civilization. And he mentioned how it is cleaner than those of similar form, and fashion in Tokyo. And he mentioned that to enter those public toilets or restrooms, the Egyptians, he's impressed, the Egyptians had to pay more than we pay in Tokyo.
Then we have to learn from our ancient Egyptians
You
or
go.
older generations of Egyptians more than
All
learning
through.
from other countries.
All through. So, because other countries learn from you. There is no problem learning from other civilizations. Of course, saluting any other civilization that I learn from. The interesting thing is that he's saying that since the Egyptians in Cairo, or the Cairenes, if you like, are paying more to enter the very clean public toilets, more than us in Tokyo, that means, Fukuzawa is mentioning, that means that those people live in an amazing economical status. The Egyptians are rich. That's what simply Fukuzawa is saying. Is richer than the people in Tokyo. All right? So, what happened is that Fukuzawa, now the mission of the samurai finished their visit to Cairo, and they are heading to Alexandria. Mentioned by some of the Japanese that they saw in Egypt in those days an invention called the telegraph. Well, apparently the first telegraph that the Japanese saw was in Egypt, because this invention was not in Japan. All of that is documented in Japan, and now it's documented in the Alexandrian Library. That's from where I got all this information. So they finished their visit, and they took the boat, and from Alexandria they went to France. Now, very importantly, that some years after this amazing visit, a man came as an emperor to Japan called Meiji. An emperor Meiji, the Meijian epoch, the Meijian era, is so important in the Japanese history that they called his era with his name, by his name. So he was interested to take Japan to another higher step of civilization, knowing, of course, that there was lots of things happening before. Japan, we have to remember, was in complete isolation for almost 260 years before the Meiji era came, and Emperor Meiji decided to destroy this kind of cocoon that Japan was enclosed in. Isolation. And he's now trying to open to the world. Because before Meiji, there was a very well-known, infamous rule of military background that he finished. So, interestingly enough, the Meiji era started to study the Muhammad Ali experience. So in order, once again, for Japan to go up to a higher step in civilization, they are studying. And you know, I'm not a big fan of Muhammad Ali, personally, or his family, all the way until King Farouk. And I've got my reasons, we can do it in another episode. But because of the people, yes, it was a great deal of stepping above what we were in, but it was the people of Egypt that I was concerned about in the days of Muhammad Ali and others. Anyway, so in this experience, the Japanese were interested to know, one, how did Muhammad Ali do that with the Egyptians? And two, why the Muhammad Ali experience collapsed, and then ended up by the occupation of the British in 1882. So see, now they are not only studying your inventions, and they are not even studying the inventions that we learned from Europe, they are also studying how did it collapse and how did it decline. And that's smart by the Japanese, because I'm not only studying how beautiful you look like or how beautiful your outfit is. I want to know if this outfit was in your possession for the last 10 years and nothing happened to it, or did it survive all of this, survive the dry clean or not. So that was smart by the Japanese. Anyway, that was studied, and it reached the point that they sent the Japanese to Egypt to study the law, the Egyptian law, and the Egyptian jurisdictions, and the Egyptian courts, especially the courts, the mixed courts of the foreigners and the Egyptians, because that was complicated. Al-Mahakim al-Mukhtalata, that's how we call it in Arabic. That mixed court between foreigners and Egyptians, that was a huge thing in Egypt. So they learned the experience of that from Egypt, and then they wrote a book about it to teach it and to make the Japanese read about it. So somebody's going to tell me, well, that happened when our heydays and this and that. I said, no, hold on for a minute. 100 years later. So 1862 is the figure. So 100 years later will be 1962. An amazing year. Another amazing year in our modern history. right? Not because I was born in it, for another reason. Why it was amazing? Because Korea, Southern Korea, decided to go through the same experience and decided to send, because you know that 10 years after the war was ended between South and Northern Korea, there was a huge reforming concept by Southern Koreans. And 10 years now, the war is over, we need now to open, we don't need now to do this, to do that. So they learned from Egypt, right? Again, they studied about Egypt. Interesting. 1960, so 2 years before the Koreans started, South Koreans started to send to Egypt and study Egypt, the daily income of the Southern Korean was $2 per day. Lately, 24,000 US per year, and that gave you how the jump. Now, here is a country that was bombarded by 2 huge bombs, and where is Japan now? God bless them. They are at the top. Good luck to them. Luck has got nothing to do with it, my dear.
So in 1862, they learned, or they saw in Egypt the first train, the first telegraph. What else did they learn from the Egyptians? What did they copy or from the Egyptians at that time?
Well, apparently they were doing this type of comparison between Egypt and Japan.
To be able to carry the experience.
Exactly.
But you talked about luck has nothing to do with this.
Yeah.
That's a very important phrase.
You're right.
If you like to elaborate on this,
yes.
Because we need to know, we're very curious to know.
No.
It was not luck?
No, my dear.
Luck.
No, there is nothing called, because my luck today,
or it was not
I've been
fate
through
or destiny or anything.
Well, we
Egyptians believe in that so much occupied by the idea of fate and destiny that we waste all our time, on that spiritual thinking and leave the other, important measures.
Yes, my dear. وَقُلْ اعْمَلُوا. Work, and Allah will see your work. قُلْ اعْمَلُوا. اقرأ. Recite, read. All those messages which was sent by the religion. So why did we leave this? Why did we leave work? Why did we leave recite, read? What the Japanese did is that they traveled to other horizons, and what the Southern Koreans did is that they traveled to other horizons, and they learned, and they went back, and they worked. Now, we all remember the famous picture of when Nagasaki and Hiroshima were bombarded, and the whole city was down, and here we see the Japanese students sitting on debris while the teacher is standing with the destruction all over the place, and that's the school. There's nothing around but debris. They wanted to go to school. They wanted to learn. So 50 almost years after the crisis of Nagasaki and Hiroshima, Japan, where is Japan and where is the US which bombarded it? Top of it. Nothing to do with, I've been through war. What, you've been through war? 1960s, what is this business of every time you mention something in Egypt, it's 1967. As if nothing happened in the world but 1967. Well, hello Germany, hello Japan in World War II. Why did those guys not sit
through ups and downs, and then you get back and
of course, my dear.
Stand up once again.
Of course, ancient Egypt. Ancient Egypt, after the King Pepi II ruled 94 years. Long rules leads to corruption. Hello, do not rule for long. 94 years of ruling. He took the power when he was 6, he died 100. Now, afterwards, a huge revolution took place. We're talking 4,000 and something years ago. The Egyptians rebelled and revolted against the guys and against the corruption of the government. Now, that was followed by 120 years, documented.
4,000 years?
And something.
It doesn't seem like 4,000.
It's been a long time now. See how time is flying, right? 120 years of undisciplined streets of Egypt. A huge insecurity, written and documented. The man goes 4, they return 3, the ancient Egyptian wrote. Meaning somebody's getting killed. The peasant farmer goes to his fields and his pastures with a shield in his hand. Farmers never hold shields. But those documentations prove to us that there was a great deal of insecurity in the country. Now, that didn't make the ancient Egyptians go, that's the end of us. That's it. We built our pyramids. We ruled for 94 years. That's it. Bye. Let other civilization race. We are leaving the race. Don't leave the race. Because after 120 years, the Egyptians got a grip, and the ancient Egyptians unified Upper and Lower Egypt again by the famous king Mentuhotep II, or we call him Mentuhotep the Great, because he was the second unificator of Upper and Lower Egypt, got unified twice. Not only once with Narmer and Ni'mer and Mina and Mendes and Hur-Aha and the Scorpion King, all those famous guys. No, it happened that the country went in shambles, as a matter of fact. And came Mentuhotep II from the south once again. All geniuses come from the south. And he unified the country, and look what happened. The great secretion of that insecurity time was the first democratic event in the history of mankind, the eloquent peasant. The eloquent peasant, Al-Fallah Al-Fasih, came directly in the 10th dynasty. This is directly at the end of the first intermediate period, which was the decline of the Egyptian empire. So a huge decline with insecurity, with killing in the streets, documented on papyri, and then, wow, came out that beautiful flash of light in the form of a farmer coming from Wadi Natrun, from Natron Valley, coming all the way to teach the world how I am not going to give my right. I was robbed, I was beaten, my products were taken. I'm standing in front of the thief and I'm saying, get me my right. In a very clean, calm, non-violent way. To teach the world how you can be a rebel without throwing one stone. How can you get your right without even burning a small piece of wheat in the field of the thief? Because you could have done that. And the king himself said something about this man. One farmer coming from the Natron Valley taught the world democracy, taught the world my right, human rights, and he got his right at the end. Justice, order. So those events, if we are not learning from, then what's the use of history? Why am I...
Great lessons.
Exactly. Why am I for the last 30 years saying, oh, our Egyptian, oh, our ancient Egyptian? I'm not saying ancient Egyptians so that we can go and camp in the past. I don't want us to camp in the past. I don't want us to cocoon ourselves in the past.
That's very important what you're saying.
Because that could be an accusation to historians, by the way. We can be accused of that, I'm telling you, with all reality.
You're calling for people to
go back
dive
and
into the past.
Yeah,
and,
the opium. You know, this business of the opium. Take some opium.
So
our history is great.
In other words, if you don't want people to camp in the past, what would be to their best interest? If we can't camp in the past, but we need to borrow this experience,
exactly.
What do we do?
Call upon your grandpas and your grandmas. And they are here, and they left you all the sciences and all the inventions. Why? Why did I see in Fields Museum in Chicago a shadoof made by the Americans to teach a class of 6 and 7 years of age? Why did the Americans put a shadoof? I say bless the people who did that there. Now, as the Japanese were impressed by the Egyptians, I was impressed by the Field Museum in Chicago. 2 by 2, a class of 6 or 7 years of age, cute kids with the teacher, all disciplined. Every child will go upstairs and will use the shadoof, get the water, and put it in a canal. All of this was built by the Americans in Fields Museum in Chicago. I saw it with my own eyes. Now, you ask your children,
right?
What is a shadoof? Well, what will be the answer? Why? Because we forgot our past.
Dr. Shammaa, we will be having some photos displayed for you here on the screen, and we would like your comment on those photos. Yes, please.
And until the pictures
Until the picture, you were talking about very important
We have the first
items.
picture here.
All right. Here we are dealing with, not very clean to me, but
it's a sort of
well,
a stone.
Well, you can elaborate because you were talking about very important items. You were talking about, which is our main topic, Japan, the culture of Japan. They came from nowhere, from scratch, and now they're taking the lead almost all over the world, not only with Egypt. What happened?
What happened is a $6 million question. Accusations of how we declined, how Japan was hit, how Japan became #1. South Korea, Seoul, the capital, in the 1960s, there was no clean waters in Seoul, but in rich districts and hotels.
1960.
1960.
That's recent.
Right?
I mean, that's recent. That's not
That's,
very far.
in history, that's yesterday. Right? There was no platforms in Korea. In southern Korea, in Seoul, there was no platforms. There was no Rasif. There was one of the things which was studied there. There was no cars factory. Look how Southern Korea, Northern Korea, and Korea now with their cars, with their car factories invading the world. Good luck to them, I say. It was mentioned that in the villages of Southern Korea there was no electricity. All villages, there was no electricity.
So in other words, you're trying to say that it took them how long? Only those few years?
Well, when did the Korean giant start? Let's say what, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, almost. So 30 years ago, from 60, Japan was before. You're right. You're right.
But very recent.
From 60, yeah. So we're talking from 60 to let's say 90. That's 30 years.
30 years.
30 years, no clean water.
We know some countries that spend them in doing nothing.
Yeah. Yeah. Here, are you going to work? Are you going to wake up? Or are you going to be leading yourself to believe that we were the past? Here is the accusation that I'm telling you about. And here I am freeing myself from this accusation as a modest historian in this country. I'm saying no. And in my lectures, I always mention this point. I'm not telling you this so that you don't, I use this, to be drowned in history. Don't drown yourself in history.
Another important item, talking about the past and delving into the past and feeling so proud and boasting all the time about the past, which is a truth. We cannot deny it. No. But are we making the best use out of this past, even in the field of tourism? No, we are losing also.
I say no. I agree with you. I say no.
So even this element, we're not, flashing this card the best way.
And that's why.
They worked on the Japanese person himself, education, culture. How can we learn from this experience?
You want to ask me what's the definition of civilization?
Please.
I will tell you. Religion, so that it can control your attitude towards what God is telling you. Inventions. Here, if you are not a civilization that invents, then from my personal point of view, you are a useless civilization. Look at the ancient Egyptians. What did they invent? So at least I can tell you 25 inventions that changed the world, not inventions that change your society only. From sewage systems, crucial, terribly important. You know, on the embankment in London, on the Thames River, the River of Thames, I was standing visiting our dear obelisk, and right beside it, they put on the corniche of the river, on the promenade, bust half statues of people who played the most crucial part in the history of London. Who is the guy that the British decided to put his bust beside our obelisk as a great honor to him? Was the man who designed the sewage system of London.
Very smart.
And I was impressed. I said, we never thought about that. Well, look at the ancient Egyptians. First toilet, first sewage system, first deals of similar to pipes. How to get rid of your sewage, how to get rid of your garbage, how to get rid of this. You are talking about now Egypt, Lebanon, we are suffering from garbage everywhere. So if I'm not going to learn from those, as everybody's doing, look at the Louvre, France, Paris. Do you have any more civilization, any better? Today, of course, everybody loves Paris. Now, when the Louvre decided to attract tourists, when the Louvre decided to attract people, when you learned that France was visited by 82 million tourists a year, what did they do? How did they get into the 21st, or at the end of the 20th century, beginning of the 21st century? What did they do? They built the pyramid. They built the pyramid, yes. The glass pyramid of the Louvre.
Only a glass pyramid?
The glass pyramid. So you're talking about the end of the 20th century, when the beginning of the 21st century, and all the technology that France has got, and bless them, they are doing a marvelous job.
If you're talking, allow me here to interfere. If you're saying such, important concerns about this particular issue or topic, then there must be a problem. There must seriously be a problem. If they're only built a glass pyramid, a newly modern glass pyramid that brought them 80 million visitors. And we have the original, authentic, the very famous 7 wonders of the world here on our land, and we cannot even attract 1 million, then there must be a problem. And don't talk to me about revolutions or anything.
Oh, no. I'm with you.
Or economy,
I
or whatever
agree
is
with
happening.
you.
Does it have to do with promoting Egypt abroad?
Okay, so how you can, number one, how you can think from plan A, from the base.
Yes, exactly. That was I was about to raise.
Exactly, from the base. Forget about generations who are well respected and everything. But I say, if a whole generation proved not an amazing success, let's not say another thing, not an amazing success, well, let's take a look at the other generation with their new ideas, our new looks, our isolated islands. You want to put this in the Tahrir Square with neon lights? Isolated islands. That's us.
Or marginalizing this new generation.
All the time. What? I'm being marginalized. Let's not talk about...
Exactly.
Let's not... If it wasn't for media...
Or marginalizing the good calibers.
Here you go. Here you go. If it wasn't for the good media that is inviting me to tell the people about this, who's going to do that? Number one, you mentioned.
Education.
Number one, you have to. And I'm not, by the way, talking about the kids or the children educated. I start by educating the teachers. So
training
that they
the
can educate. Exactly.
Right. Training the teachers on
what
how to educate.
I told the minister this of education one day. I told them, bring your teachers to us. We are not going to teach them history. They know history better than they taught us history. But we're going to maybe tell them how to convey the message, how to convey
how
the
to
information.
Create a link with their students.
Exactly. How to be charismatic, how to put the important things first. Don't tell me that he ruled 66 years and 10 months. Who cares? Let's talk. I've been reading history for 34 years. Who cares about Ramesses II ruling for 66 years and 10 months? And if you said 11 months, you're going to fail the exam.
Right.
Well, leave this to us.
This is true.
Leave this to us. Leave this to the people who married Egyptology like myself.
Exactly.
And then you can make me fail in an examination if I made a mistake. That is your right. But for that child, 7 or 8 or 10 years of age, don't tell him this. Don't tell him that Ramesses II one day decided to go and free the Egyptian nations outside the boundaries, for example. Teach him how he was so nice to his wife that he ordered to carve her a temple. Carve her a temple, not build her a temple. Carve her a temple. The other day, I was 3 or 4 days, I was in the University of Cairo giving a lecture, and I looked at a very famous professor there. I am telling her, your husband, she said, huh? I said, your husband carved you a temple? So she laughed. You know, it was a joke.
So you think
can joke in the middle of
you
history
should
as well.
teach them how to love their history.
Exactly. You know, I've got a lecture called Jokes in Ancient Egypt.
We talked about that before.
Remember? In Windows, I think. Probably in Windows. Yeah.
In the
So 2 hours talking about how the ancient Egyptians had sense of humor. But of course they were. And where did you get your sense of humor
when
from?
you have a sense of humor, a good sense, you're smart also.
You're right there. One, you are liked. One, you are liked. You are popular. All girls and boys who has got sense of humor, they are more popular than beautiful girls. I was one day a young guy, and I used to be attracted to a sense of humor girl than a gorgeous girl. Okay, the looks and everything, but who I want to sit with and talk. Your mother will tell you some years ago, take this one, because she's got sense of humor. That was a comment. Marry this one. So how, in a tomb, for God's sakes, in a tomb, he puts jokes. So is this a man or a lady who's talking about the afterlife all the time, and he's obsessed by the idea of, I'm gonna die, I'm gonna die, I'm gonna die? Like some documentaries and historians would like to convey that the ancient Egyptian was a civilization of death. But of course not. It was a civilization of life.
And reincarnation.
Exactly.
But there is here raises an important question raises itself, which is, if we were that eloquent and rhetoric and sophisticated and civilized, what happened? I mean, and don't talk to me about the only 30 years.
Oh, no, no, no.
We only kept the sense of humor so far.
I mean, there
can
were
start with
ages
that.
and ages and ages and decades. No, not decades, even ages.
Oh, no, we're talking thousands. You're right.
Thousands of
You're
ages.
talking
So what
Yes.
happened?
Okay.
From
Answer
where can
for
we trace the decline?
Exactly. This I like this phrase, trace the decline.
When did
You know-
it start?
You know why I like this phrase? Is because my slogan is read your history so that you don't repeat your mistakes.
Mistakes, exactly.
And we're going to tell
Very
me,
simple lesson.
but history,
Learn from your experiences.
here you go. And learn from the experiences of the other. And that's what Japan and South Korea did with us. Right or wrong?
Now we want to learn from their experience.
And there is no problem with that. Salute everybody who jumps the race. You want to do the turtle or the tortoise and the rabbit, do the tortoise and the rabbit. I'm great. I'm
But the
16,000
question
years of
the
history.
question here is, are we doing anything?
We need to
It's
no.
the tortoise and the, or the
answer-
rabbit or any other plan? Or
We all
B or
learned
C or
that.
D?
We all learned that story in school. We never practiced it. This rabbit and turtle. You ask a good question. Is that when did it happen? You ask this question to 100 historians, you'll get 100 different answers.
Exactly.
If you ask me as a modest Egyptian who is monitoring Egyptian society today and in the past, I will tell you this. There are three major reasons if we learn from them. First, acknowledge them. First, acknowledge that they happen, right? Because sometimes you get this denial business. Oh, no, that's the conspiracy theory. As conspiracy facts. Enemy is trying to stop us. Well, he's working. Your enemy is working. Look what happened Friday, day before yesterday, right? 4th of March. They are working. The Museum of Israel. They opened a Museum of Egypt. 680 pieces, Egyptian pieces in a museum.
And we're still thinking about the fourth generation war.
Exactly. And I don't know what and who's writing what, an article this, an article that. Well, hello guys, 4 major museums in the world. Turin in Italy, Berlin, Germany, Louvre in Paris, Metropolitan Museum in New York, United States, has agreed to give a loan in the form of a number of beautiful statues, ancient Egyptian statues, from the museums there to the Museum of Israel in Al-Quds, starting 4th of March, ending 25th of October. The tickets, the tourism, the payment,
Recognition.
the travel, the recognition. Now we are saving the world's history. Now we are kind of, if you like, exporting intellectual things to the world. Look, the statues. You never saw them in the Metropolitan? Oh, come to the Museum of Israel, you will see it. I say, your enemy is working. What are you doing in return? And since there will be no nukes flying all over the sky, and since nobody's crazy enough to push the buttons of war or to even play the drums of war, so now your war is a war of intellectuality. Hello, if you were that experienced in this war, if you led this war in a smart way, there will be no problems with the River Nile, there will be no problems with the dam in Ethiopia. Take this as a good example. You know that Mussolini, see where I'm taking you? Mussolini took an obelisk. The Italians stole an obelisk, almost 180 tons of stone, from the civilization of Axum, A-X-U-M. Axum is a famous ancient civilization in Abyssinia, Al-Habasha, Abyssinia, Ethiopia now. They took it, they put it, and they raised it in Italy. I mean, from days of Mussolini. And the Ethiopians never ever stopped asking it to be brought back. All the way until 2008, 2009, and they regained it. And they raised it in Ethiopia, in Axum, with a huge celebration, with religious people attending, blessing the obelisk. So don't talk to me about, oh, there was a revolution. Oh, there was insecurity in the streets. This is a very good excuse. Everybody's using this excuse. Don't use excuses. Because Japan did not say, oh, we've been bombarded, oh, we're going to sleep for a while. Oh, we are the only country in the history of the world which were bombarded by hydrogen bombs. Oh, we're going to take a rest. Oh, we're going to ask for money from them. What? Germany, total down, total up. Now the German machines are going everywhere. They're invading the world. And now the lady of Germany is ruling Europe. Well, let's talk. She's ruling Europe. She's the strongest Iron Maiden. We thought Margaret Thatcher was the Iron Maiden. Oh, hello, we've got a new Iron Maiden now.
And before her, it was Helmut Kohl.
And exactly, and Helmut Kohl. And now what we are talking about, starting in the education, we are talking today about how we can stop Oka and Ortega from making some pollution in the Egyptian music, and how if the people will enter the stadium for football matches or not. What is this? Sports, I love sports, and I love football. But put your priorities right, guys. Education, number one. Number two, conspiracy fact happening? Yes, of course. Because it's been happening since ancient Egypt.
Right, Dr. Bassam Shammaa, we're running out of time, unfortunately, and Dr. Bassam Shammaa, prominent historian and Egyptologist, many thanks for watching.
Thank you, my dear.
And ladies and gentlemen, with this we wrap up this edition of The Breakfast Show. You were in the company of Niveen Ramzi and Dina Hussein. Don't forget to join us tomorrow, same time, with another crew.